have thought about or may not have thought about, and all of a sudden they have an opportunity to hear a discussion about that. So it'll be helpful if you do join. That's what makes this thing work, called a virtual or teletown hall type experience. Before we go to lines, let me just mention that in a policy update, Biden's executive orders have come fast and furious. In fact, what he's done so far, before even his 100 days are up, is put more executive orders across the table than the past three presidents combined. Executive orders can be helpful. I don't oppose them, but when you see the executive orders he's doing, just totally undermining and doing away with past policy that was put in place by the past administration, that had had significant positive impact, and going the opposite direction relative to China, relative to the Paris Climate Accord, relative to the World Health Organization, and a number of things relative to the safety and what produced a vaccine in the fastest time in history for us to now get out to the people. And the ramping up of production of the vaccine is taking place every day. And that's good for the entire nation as well as Michigan and our local communities. We're catching up, but this has been an all-hands-on-deck process. But to see some of the executive orders that President Biden is putting through right now after, and I sat there at the inauguration and listened to him say this was going to be a government, an administration for all the people, Republican, Democrats, and we were going to unify this nation. And there hasn't been anything that has been done so far, I have to say, honestly. And you can look at all the reports of what he's done so far. There has not been one handout compromise placed before the people. And so these executive orders are of great concern to me. And these next 2 years will show impact, I believe, of what happens when you move back away from limited government and the freedom and choice and opportunity to a one-size-fits-all governmental system. Well, hopefully some of this has got your thoughts in mind on questions. And so let's start that. The first person who pressed star 3 on the telephone keypad to get through to our receptionist to be put in the queue is Kate from Saline. Hi, Kate. Welcome to the Teletown Hall.
Hi, thank you for hearing me. I just wanted to bring forth a couple of concerns, and I'll keep it quick. I know these go really fast. I love it when you do them. I'm a big fan. So I'm a mom of 5, and I have one that's currently in public school, sort of. It's hybrid. It's only 2 days a week physically, and this is really impacting our kids, especially kids with special needs. I know this has been brought up again and again, but nobody ever seems to listen, and I know it's states' rights, and I know it's a lot of the governor's doing, but this isn't okay. It's not okay. It's not good. I'm also concerned about the crippling debt we are saddling our children with all of these relief bills, and they're just shoving them through. I don't agree with that at all, and I'm really upset. And I don't want my children to be enslaved by this debt that we are piling on when we could very easily open up our economy more, and we need to be doing that. Thank you.
Kate, thank you, and I hear the emotion in your voice, and I appreciate that, and I feel the same thing, not for my kids, it's for my grandkids now, that this debt is piling up. And let me jump in real quickly and say I supported the initial CARES Act that we did in a very bipartisan way, almost unanimous, to put $3.3 trillion in the war against this unseen enemy that came to us. But there comes a point in time, after we've spent all of that, we've spent the time educating people, we've shown the science, and we know that this is a virus that has impact, and that some people it has much more serious impact than others. But we also know we can't stay shut down forever, and we don't have enough taxpayers to keep spending like we're spending with no end in sight. And indeed, I mean, the perfect example, Kate, is that we hear our governor, we hear Joe Biden, we hear Fauci talk about following the science, listening to science. Well, just last week, the president's own CDC director said that schools should open for in-person classroom attendance, and they can do it safely, follow the basic guidelines, and it can be open safely, not only for the kids, but also for the overwhelming majority of the faculty of the teachers as well. And where there is a faculty member that has a significant pre-existing condition, health condition, there can be accommodations made. But the type of impact that is taking place on our children, the increase in suicide attempts, suggestions, as well as completions, is scary. What's taking place? The increase back when we thought we were going the right direction, now the back to an increase in opioid, heroin abuse, cocaine abuse, substance abuse generally is just not what we want to see take place. And then, like you said, Kate, the only way we can pay off the debt and move in the right direction, it's going to take a while, but it's by having an economy that's open, because the only one that pays the ones that pay this debt off are taxpayers, and that includes businesses, small businesses, large businesses, and the individuals who work in those businesses that then spend, pay taxes, and develop an economy. If we continue like we've done in the state of Michigan, with opening parts of the economy and leaving some key parts where upwards of 80% of all the people that who work in small businesses are at question or deeply challenged in their work situation. So we're going to keep working on that. That's why it was frustrating last night to see that the amendments that we offered that would encourage schools, in fact, give some push to opening schools, doing it safely, but opening them so we can follow the science and put kids back where they will best be cared for, educated and prepared for the future, and their mental health and all the rest can be enhanced, and mom and dad can go back to work without the worry of what are you going to do with the kids who would be left at home when they generally would be in school. We'll keep working on it, and it will be a battle in the next 2 years, that's for sure. But I'm hoping that once we get past the impeachment trial and all of that, that walls can start to come down, and we can get back to doing what our government ought to do in paving the way and opening up opportunity for people to do for themselves, and letting states do the right thing or else suffer the consequences by other states doing the right thing and them being left behind. Michigan needs to take that consideration. Again, this is a live teletown hall meeting tonight, coming to you from our Jackson office. Tonight, I look forward to hearing more questions, ideas, and comments like we heard from Kate and others. And it'll be helpful if you join us. And to do that, *3 on your telephone keypad is what you press, puts you into a receptionist, who puts you in the queue. And next one in the queue here is Kyle from Dexter. Hi, Kyle.
Hey, Representative Walberg, how are you?
I'm doing fine. I'm talking pretty fast to try to get everything in here.
I appreciate you taking my call. I know you're tired, and like Kate said, I'll try to keep it quick. I really appreciate you doing these and taking my call. I'm a little bit frustrated, as Kate was. I've got a child in school also that's, really not doing well mentally. Grades have dropped, and it's not like him, but he's lost a year. And Kate, you're not alone. My question was more about the spending, the money that's going overseas on this COVID relief bill. I just couldn't believe it when I started looking into it and seeing all this money going overseas that is coming out of our taxes, and we're the ones hurting. How is that excusable? I'd like to know what else we can do to make sure things like this don't continue to happen and put us and our children in this crippling debt that Kate brought up.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. And as I looked at it, we tried to take some of those out last night, those expenditures that aren't vital at this point in time. And certainly some of the millions of dollars of expenditure for paying for undocumented immigrants. I guess I'll use that term so we don't offend anyone. But we're talking about people who are here and they're not here legally. And there's millions of dollars to care for their health care needs, their living expense needs. And it was in this piece of legislation, plus dollars going to other strange programs, including relationship with China, that we shouldn't be paying for if indeed this is a COVID relief bill. those shouldn't be part of it. They have no context there at all. And so I think what I can offer to you is to make sure that you contact your U.S. senators so that as they look at what we've done here in the House and we'll send back to them, that they will have heard from their constituents that they're concerned that we do what's necessary relative to COVID. And certainly there are some things that I could support very readily. Additional costs for schools to open and stay open, additional PPE. I think we ought to make sure that teachers from K-12 through higher education, the faculty, are all part of the 1B classification, so they fit with frontline workers and receive their vaccine so they can be in the classroom and can deal with what we need to do to educate kids, especially with all the tax dollars that have gone into it, or the loans that have been taken by students to have an education, and now they've missed it all. I talked with 6 college presidents from my district today, and all of them are concerned about the fact that their students are being left behind as a result of the continuing regulations that makes it very difficult to educate, even though they're doing their absolute best to make sure the students abide by the rules, use the social distancing, etc., so they can still stay in the classroom, they can still have some of their extracurricular activities, athletics, you name it. That has to continue, and if we're spending money as opposed to putting dollars toward helping our educational institutions, helping to get the vaccines out more readily, helping to do all of those logistical issues, we're not helping our American taxpayer and citizen. And so we'll keep battling it. Like I said, I'll be in a marathon markup of the bill in the Energy and Commerce Committee starting out 11 tomorrow and continuing all the way probably through the night and into the next day to try to deal with this and hopefully get some amendments, unless it's going to be like yesterday when the Democrats refused to accept one single amendment of the almost 30, I believe it was 39 amendments that we offered. Thanks for your question. We'll keep at it. Let's move on to the next person. Again, Congressman Tim Walberg, live teletown hall with you tonight. And these questions make it a thing of value, I'd hope, for each of you. Let me just jump in here and say we put out a newsletter. It's an email newsletter each week. Many people are on that already. You're not required to be a Republican, Democrat, Independent, Libertarian, or whatever. But it goes out once a week, generally on Friday, and we only use it for that purpose. Legally, we couldn't use your information for any other purpose than that newsletter. And we'd love to have you join us, and if you'd like to get on the newsletter list, press *0 at any time. You won't be taken off of the call here, but the receptionist can put you into our newsletter, email newsletter list. Let's now go to Mike from Newport. Hi, Mike.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing fine.
Well, the one guy asked a question I was going to ask. Why you guys send money all over the world when we need money here and we got people homeless? How you doing that? I mean, how are you even allowing that? But since he already asked that question, you already kind of answered it because you're going to try to work on it. I want to know, why is Eric Swalwell in this impeachment hearing? Why ain't Republicans standing up to these Democrats and impeaching them for all this insurrection they put out? I mean, why ain't you doing something about it? Why are you guys just sitting there with your tail between your legs? Do something.
Well, see, that hasn't been the case. The tail hasn't been between our legs, and you can look at my record on that. But I get what you're saying. But remember, majority has the power. We have no power or authority to hold a impeachment trial. We're not the majority. It's the Democrats that are in majority. We almost took back the majority. We came close, but not quite. They thought, pundits, media, everybody thought we would lose 15 seats. We didn't lose a single seat. And we picked up now, it appears it's going to be 11 seats. We're still short. We need 5 more seats to overturn that majority, and I'm hoping that'll be the next term. But for right now, Eric Swalwell is part of that team because Nancy Pelosi appointed him. Here's a guy that was in bed with allegedly with a Chinese spy, and was around her from the time he was on the city council and when he ran for Congress, and up until just a couple years ago, or a year and a half ago. There was no change until all of a sudden something came out that she might be a spy, and then he dropped her and she went back to China. Why in the world would this guy, number one, be on the Select Committee on Intelligence in the House that gets the most classified security information of any member of Congress if you're on that committee? We get plenty, but we don't get as much as they get on the Intelligence Committee on a daily basis, and he's on that. And here he is, a guy with that background, on the team that is allegedly going to convict a former president who's a private citizen now, and in a constitutional way carry out this trial on him. They know they're not going to win, but they want to try to split the Republican Party. That's their whole effort, and try to strip them away as a result of attacking Trump. The dollars that are going overseas, there are some that are very positive and helpful. For instance, what we've done in aid in the past and offer of opportunity for Israel, for instance. We get the bang for the buck back from them in a number of the inventions, the security issues, the intelligence gathering capabilities. It's great help to us. There are some other countries that we have assisted with humanitarian resources that keep them as our allies, which can be very helpful to us, as opposed to them going with China, who's all too willing to try to buy friends with what they are willing to give off the backs of their slave citizens in China. So there's some things that can be used, and it's only about 0.17% of our national budget that goes to foreign aid. But some of that is just garbage and shouldn't be going there, especially relative to a COVID relief package that is supposed to be on COVID. But again, the majority has that power. They're using a procedural rule called reconciliation that gets around the requirement of the Senate to have 60 votes in order to bring a bill up for consideration. They only need 51 votes, pass it now, and that's what they're going to do. And so our effort right now is just to point out all that's in it. That's why the 39 amendments we offered last night, including my own, were there to make sure that people had a chance, if they're watching, to understand what is being put in or left out of so-called COVID legislation to help when, in fact, it's going to end up hurting and hindering a lot that goes on. That's the best answer I have for you. I'd love to be back in the majority. These 4 years that I will be in the minority are going to be difficult years, but the people in elections spoke. That's how it turned out. We came close to taking back the majority, but missed ever so slightly, but that doesn't count. We missed, and so we'll have to be a loyal opposition and speak as strongly as we can. And remember, if you don't hear some of us Republicans standing up and fighting, just think who the media sources are that would report our words. That's the main reason you're not hearing, because frankly, the media is on the other side. Thanks for the question. We're going to go on to the next person is Susanne from Jackson. Hi, Susanne. Susanne?
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing fine. Glad to have you with us.
Hi, I was just wondering because I'm concerned because, of course, it's in the Senate's hand right now, but where do you actually stand, and what were your words to help defend the president on this impeachment?
Well, I think they were better than words that I did. I voted against the impeachment, and I've been chastised, castigated. I've been canceled. I've been shamed as a result of that by media, by large business corporations, and I could name a few tonight, but I'm giving them a chance to back off and get some common sense about it, because the Democrats objected, for instance, to every one of our past 3 Republican presidents. They stood and objected to the Electoral College certification. So for me to object to that, and for me to vote against impeachment when there was no even cross-examination allowed by the president or his attorneys. There wasn't any type of trial or hearings about it. It was about a 2-hour process of impeachment, and I voted against it. And I always think that actions are even better than words. I stood up and spoke against the impeachment. I put out press releases against the impeachment. I said there was no reason for impeaching a president for what he did or what he said, though I might have wished he would have said it in different ways and sometimes not said anything like he said. His policy was great. Our country was benefited by his administration. And to hold him responsible for the idiots that stormed the Capitol and forget about the 7,000 people that didn't storm the Capitol, that did First Amendment liberties like any other demonstration that goes on, that the media calls peaceful demonstrations, that burned down cities, burned down federal buildings, police stations, burned up police cars, and called for defunding the police. When 7,000 or so people stood out on the Capitol lawn and did nothing as far as breaching the Capitol or following the idiots that went into the Capitol and threatened our existence. Again, Susanne, I guess that's my best answer. I spoke loud and clear by voting against impeachment, and we're bearing the negative consequences from the other side right now, but I take it as a badge of courage. Thank you. Let's move on. Again, this is Congressman Tim Walberg with a live tele-town hall meeting tonight, coming to you directly from the district, and glad to have you as part of the program tonight. For those of you that may just have joined, you got the voicemail that was left in your phone, and you joined in now. This is Congressman Tim Walberg. It's live. It's a telephone town hall meeting, and your friends and neighbors are asking questions by pressing *3 on their telephone keypad. If they'd like to do that, if you don't, just want to listen, that's fine too, for as long or as short as you want to do that. But we hope it's valuable to you. Now we go to Stephen from Chelsea. Hi, Stephen.
Hello, Representative Walberg. I understand you're feeling somewhat powerless. I also feel powerless, probably for the next 2 years here with the what's going on in Washington and around the country. But I'm going to try and make it a little bit more local, I guess a more personal feeling of being powerless. I'm a cancer patient. I have leukemia, and I receive pills every day to maintain my leukemia. And my doctor told me if I got COVID, I probably had a 30% or greater chance of not making it. And I've talked to some other people, and they're in the same boat. I'm just a few months under 65, but I've talked to people that are over 65. A couple of them are cancer patients. One of them just had a bypass a few months ago, and he's 85. And we all belong to the U of M system. And what became really frustrating to me, I found out 3 weeks ago that the U of M healthcare system made all their employees critical employees. So if they're working from home, they're critical. They got their COVID shots. If they're administrators, they got their COVID shots. So there's tens of thousands of people in the U of M healthcare system who've all received their shots, but none of us patients can, who have a high probability of not making it. I spent days on the phone talking to healthcare systems. I spent hours trying to get appointments, and I can't do anything. Why would the University of Michigan put their employees who are working from home, some in their 20s and 30s, ahead of their patients that are most at risk?
That's a great question, and I think the only answer can come from the University of Michigan healthcare system, but also from our governor. I mean, the policies that are in place are controlled by each state. And there are states surrounding us that have different policies on how people get on the list in a priority status. In your case, I believe you ought to be able to have, especially since you're close to 65, but you are in a compromised setting with leukemia, and I sure wish you the best. And I know one person personally who has had leukemia and had COVID and survived well, so pray that would be the same for you if that should happen. But there are means with a doctor's request that you can be bumped up. And let me just go out on a limb and say, give a call to my office and present your situation, And
I did send an email about 3 weeks ago.
Follow it up. If you send an email, it's in our listing. We can determine that as well. Hopefully, it didn't go to the junk box. But give a call. Don't just send an email. If you're going to call my office, call the office at 517. If you got a pen, let me state it: 517-780-9075. Again, that's 517-780-9075. My staff, in most cases, I can say, has heard it all. They will know the sources to go, if there's a source to go to address that specific concern. As I listen to that concern, not only are you basically at the level 65, but you have a pre-existing condition, a vital health concern that could make you in a very difficult situation if you hit COVID. And as far as I know, a doctor can request, based upon those extenuating circumstances, that you be put into a higher priority group. But
I spoke to my oncologist and my primary, and I've got both of them very angry at me because I pushed it, and neither one said they could do anything for me.
They'll call my office, and they may have a different story. Don't get angry with them. Please. They're going to do their absolute best. They want you to live, as I do, and want you to have. But also, we have these difficulties when you have a system as large as University of Michigan, and they're going to get their share and probably more of vaccine opportunities, and they're going to make determination on the best interest of their people. I don't know whether they're giving it to the 20-year-old or not. I'm taking your word for that. But my concern is, regardless of what they're doing, there will be vaccines that come out, and let's do our best to get you and others like you into that queue more rapidly. And again, every day, Pfizer, Moderna, and others are producing these vaccines more and more. They're coming into fruition. Remember, vaccines before, on average, would take upwards of 10 years to get a vaccine. This was done in 7 months. And now the issue, because they were able to and willing to start producing before they got even approval from the FDA, we had that level of vaccine on hand. But we got 300 million people in the United States, and it's going to take a little while to ramp up, but it's moving. And we'll just pray that we get to you before you have that COVID problem. So all the best. Give a call to the office. Let's move on here. Again, Congressman Tim Walberg in a live teletown hall meeting with you tonight. Hopefully answers to questions will be of interest to you, or in this case, even my phone number for this office will be of help to you. Let's move to Scott from Jackson. Hi, Scott.
Hi, Tim. Congressman Walberg. How are you doing tonight?
Tim's fine. I'm doing well. A little tired, maybe a little groggy from that 4:30 ending of committee this morning, but we're doing fine.
I can imagine. I also want to express my sympathies and best thoughts and wishes for the gentleman speaking before me. I believe his name was Stephen. I hope that everything goes as smoothly as possible for you.
Right.
I live here in Jackson. I'm a father of 2 very young and energetic boys. My wife is a Catholic school teacher here in Jackson as well. I feel very fortunate to be in this situation that the school that my wife teaches at and both that the boys go to as well have been open this entire year, minus 1 week when there was not enough teachers to go into the district. So my biggest concern or maybe question is kind of a 2-part question is there anything that you feel could be done more, regardless of party affiliation, left or right? I could honestly care less who it came from. But is there anything that can be done more to support teachers, both public and private and Catholic schools, to get them more support, funding, and access to whatever it is they may need to better provide for their students? I do know that the online systems are I'll say the online learning curriculum is definitely not the best scenario, especially for the younger children. A child can't sit in front of a computer for 6 or 8 hours a day like I do. I'm a software engineer. It's my job. It's not the best learning method. So the first part is, like I said, for what can we do to boost education for the teachers to get, teachers the tools and the funding and support they need to provide the best experience for their classroom. And the second part is, as I said, that the school that my family attends, they have been open this entire time minus 1 week. Is there any could it be possible to maybe analyze and look at these schools at what they're doing to successfully go back into an in-person session safely, to see what they're doing, see how they're managing it, the actions that they're taking for if somebody may have possibly been exposed to, send them home for 2 weeks. We kind of have like a remote learning system ready for them, and the lessons kind of pre-made almost for those time periods, and basically just copy paste, wash, rinse, repeat for the rest of the schools here in Michigan. Is there any reason to think that that's not a possibility?
Oh, absolutely. Now, absolutely. And we know of private parochial schools that have been open almost the entire time, just like your wife's school. And I applaud them for doing it. Some would say, well, it's a Catholic school, it's a small school, you don't have to deal with as many students, and you don't deal with some of the family settings that are there that don't provide the type of support that's necessary to send a child to school. And that's true. But there are common policies that schools all across this country and all across this state who have remained open or have opened rapidly and are doing it effectively, not without occasional student or faculty person getting COVID, but they've done it to keep any type of spread of happening, and they've kept the kids where they ought to be, and that's in a classroom, experiencing their life as students, experiencing many of the extracurricular activities, and certainly not having a breakdown of their learning time like so many kids who are good students and now are a year behind, if not more, because of not having a true education experience that they learn a lot from and gain a lot from. So those things, and I know for a fact that there are public schools and private schools that are sharing the ideas that they're doing. They're following the processes that the CDC and others have given to them. I certainly am supportive in a bipartisan fashion. I've got votes to show that as well, of putting dollars toward education as long as it's used to keep the schools open and functioning. And that includes PPE, personal protective equipment. It includes dollars for special technology issues because it costs to get students and teachers up to speed, as you know, being in that software industry, get them up to speed to use the online capabilities, to train them and educate them in such a way that's useful, to get broadband or Wi-Fi opportunities for people. So we have pushed for that. I don't want to be partisan here, but I got to tell you the truth, that Nancy Pelosi could have had funding for schools, additional dollars to help for all of these issues, a month before the election, but she wouldn't bring the bill up until after the election and a new president was put in place. Now that's political. That hurt. Republicans and Democrats were ready to vote for that legislation, and she held it up. And now we're going through this legislation that is a day late and a dollar short in dealing with some of those needs, including dealing with the issues that your wife faces with additional costs for teachers to educate in a school setting like this. We're going to keep pushing, and while this bill that is going to pass, and it'll pass in a partisan fashion, yet there will be components of that bill that I could have easily supported if had been given the opportunity to do it in a bipartisan way and have some amendments to take out some of the garbage that's in the bill of the $1.9 trillion that don't have anything to do with education or with COVID, but are giveaways to various special interest groups. I'll leave it there. Thanks, Scott, for bringing up that point, and we'll keep working on it. And again, thanks to your wife and her school district for what they do, and we hope other school districts achieve the same thing. Again, Congressman Tim Walberg here, live town hall meeting tonight. Moving forward here in an hour that is the fastest hour for me in my life, and so I want to move right on next person in line here is Al, I believe, from Sand Creek. Hi, Al.
Hi, how are you doing, Congressman?
I'm doing well.
Good.
Hope you are.
Yes, I am. I got a question on this HR 127 that's going in to committee, I guess, from Mrs. Jackson Lee from Texas, and I wondered if you had any update on that, or what your feelings as far as if it's going to go anywhere other than coming out of committee or not.
For the listeners, why don't you tell them your concerns about that bill before I answer it? 'Cause, I do have an answer. I know Jackson Lee, and I know she is not a pro-Second Amendment person. That's for sure.
Well, I would ask your listeners, if they're not aware of it, to go ahead and bring it up online and take a look at it for themselves. But what they're trying to do, from what I understand from reading about it, and I read the whole report, is they're going to try to strip us of our Second Amendment rights, and they're going to do that by having us register our guns, deciding whether we ought to have guns or not, and restrict the ammunition that we have. And I can't believe that somebody'd even come up with this, but.
Well, Jackson Lee, you can believe it. Shiela certainly doesn't understand the full reason for the First Amendment or Second Amendment in our U.S. Constitution, which begins the Bill of Rights. Two most important liberties that we have that are God-given liberties of speech, of religion, but also the right to defend ourselves. And that's what the Second Amendment is for. She wants to, among other things, require us to go through psychological testing, mental health testing, to make sure we're qualified to have a gun. Now, how arbitrary do you think that will be? Who will be making a determination whether I have mental capabilities of having a weapon? This is the same approach they tried a few years ago, and will try again, to say that any person who is on Social Security and needs someone to do their tax work or help them with understanding their Social Security benefits, that they will not be able to have a weapon because they have evidence that they are not competent enough to deal with their taxes. Of course, I think there are a lot of younger people who aren't on Social Security that when they get to look at the tax forms, they don't feel confident to do it either, and they hire people to do that for them. So this is the type of thing that HR 127 is purporting to do, to try to sound like it's really sensitive to the needs of people, to make sure that they are mentally qualified and fit in order to purchase a weapon. And if indeed that process determines that they are capable, then they can have their Second Amendment liberties. If for some reason the counselor or the policy shows that they miss on some point that the policy or the counselor feels they miss on, then they could lose their Second Amendment liberties. That's not constitutional. Constitution doesn't give it any requirements. That's why we have other laws that says if you abuse your rights, you're going to go to jail. And that weapon, that pistol, that long gun, even if it's an AR that looks like it's automatic when it isn't, unless somebody illegally made it automatic and sold it to somebody who illegally bought it, which it is illegal, it doesn't do anything until a person themselves uses it in the wrong way. But I can't.
What do you think the chance of it making out of committee is?
I don't think there's a chance that it's going to pass muster. I don't think President Biden will have a chance to sign it. I still believe that there's enough in the Senate, enough members of the Senate, that even if the House does pass it, which could happen in the House the way it's configured right now. Most of the Second Amendment Democrats that I've hunted with and I've shot target, trap, skeet, and sporting clay with in an annual event are no longer here. They're gone. They've been run out by their own Democrat colleagues, primaried and taken out because they were blue dog Democrats. They leaned conservative, kind of the old John F. Kennedy Democrat, and they're gone. So it could happen in the House. I find it a bit hard to believe that it will happen yet, but it could. But I think the Senate is so deeply split, it's not going to get to the president yet. But that ought to remind us that our liberties, our constitutional liberties, are always at risk if we let things slip and don't stay in contact with what reality is around us. So thanks for bringing it up, Al, and we will certainly be there as a defender of the Constitution. Whether I own a gun or not, I'm a defender of the Constitution. I happen to be also a believer that that's my right and my responsibility in being able to defend and protect my family, myself, my property, and use the resources of the Constitution, including the Second Amendment, as a legal citizen. Let's move on here. I'm told I only have 12 minutes left, so I better hustle here. Right now we're going to Adam in Carleton. Hi, Adam.
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I am a member of the Millwright Local 1102, and we are under the Carpenter umbrella, and I'm sure you know that our pension is in major trouble, and not by our own fault at all. Give you a little history. Back in the 90s, when we were fully funded, the law said that we can't be overfunded and save for a rainy day. Well, come 2008, that was a rainy day. And ever since then, the status of our funding of our pension has gone downhill. And we've made several adjustments to it to try to fix it, but to no avail. And we're getting to the desperate stage. And we have applied to the federal government kind of a reconstruction of pension, but if that went through, retirees and potential future retirees are looking at up to like a 32% deduction. And I mean, if you could just imagine being retired and you're looking at 32%.
I can't only imagine it. I've been confronted by people. I remember a gentleman in my district, a Teamster, who was 73 years of age with a significant health problem that made it impossible for him to work. And now finding out that he would be losing 37% of his entire pension. And how do you live on that when you plan for it? You paid into it, and even your employer has paid into it. But as a result of bad union leadership agreements, as well as downturn in the economy, bad investments, all of a sudden you're in a problem. You can't extricate yourself. You can't leave the union. You can't leave the system. You can't sell your business if you're an employer in your system. And so this is an issue.
And I think you left out the number one factor, in which, in some of these, it's the government's fault, just from the restrictions that the government puts on them.
Well, it's the government's fault for letting it slide as long as it did. But it wasn't the government's fault in saying, listen, you can't have a slush fund out there. And some of that was the problem. They were taking more in and using as a slush fund some of the union leadership, and the poor rank and file were stuck with that. And then there was no remedy in trying to find ways to stop that. I remember back in 2008 sitting on the committee that deals with that. To this day, I sit on a committee, an Education and Labor Committee. I chaired the Health, Employment, Labor, and Pension Subcommittee for one term, and fought with the Obama administration to do something. And they were always told, I remember the chairman of that committee told me in 2008, we won't have any problem for 20 years. There'll be time to fix it. Well, we're almost at those 20 years, and it's blowing up, and there are going to be people that are hurt. I voted for the Butch Lewis bill last year that was going to fix that. It didn't get through in the Senate and get finalized. It's going to be pushed again this year. Butch Lewis isn't a good bill, but it's better than nothing. And I told my Republican leadership, if we didn't get serious and do something ourselves to make it work, I was going to support that proposal as at least something to urge us on. You're talking fact. The central states issue, it's all melting down, and we don't have a way out of it if we don't fix it now. There will be some loss, but we don't have it. We don't necessarily have to make it as significant as you're talking about in order to come up with a solution. The only thing is we've got to get to it. And again, that's what I've been pushing on the Education and Labor Committee, on the Health Subcommittee, Health, Employment, Labor, and Pension Subcommittee, and hopefully in a bipartisan way we'll get it done. I hear that there may be a proposal put in to this reconciliation bill. I haven't seen that yet. Again, I'm not the chairman anymore. I'm not in the majority either. But if not, it'll come up as a standalone bill, and hopefully this turn we will find a solution that won't be perfect, but will at least keep you out of the threat that you're in right now. I appreciate you bringing it up, but I have to move on here. I've got to move to Sue from Carleton.
Good evening, Representative Walberg. I just wanted to thank you for everything that you have been doing and how you communicate so well. My concern is about the vaccine. I am in the eligible group. I also have an oncologist at U of M. And today I received an email stating that they're going to be supporting more the local health departments and the pharmacies, which I think is a good thing because that means people don't have to travel as far. Can you verify that?
Yeah, that's already been initiated. It's one thing I strongly support that the Biden administration has done, and it was going to be done by the Trump administration as well. But it makes no difference. Moving to the pharmacies, like West Virginia has done. West Virginia is number one state in the union. When you think of West Virginia as a hillbilly state and all of that, it isn't. They came up with the idea of saying we're not going to wait for the federal government to tell us how to do it. We're going to do it the best way possible for us. We know that everybody is within 20 minutes at most of a pharmacy, and so we're going to major run through our vaccines run through pharmacists so people can get them, and it's worked well. They have led the nation in the logistics and getting vaccines out, and so for us to go here to read today of Meyer and their pharmacies getting on the front line, and other pharmacies as well, will, I think, ramp up the pace. You know, my wife has been on a list now for a number of weeks. She's in the right age group to receive it. I'm not going to give away her age. She's younger than me, but I'm not going to be so foolhardy to do that. But she's still waiting for it. Hopefully now, as they're ramping up more and more vaccines coming out and moving it toward where people are at, you and my wife and others will finally be able to get that vaccine, and we can keep moving on, getting more and more of our population, and ultimately get back to the real world normal again, where I can see people's faces.
Do you have any timeline on that, or is it just a shot in the dark?
It's a shot in the dark right now, but every day we're expanding. We've gone from 1 million doses a day across the country to now getting well over 1 million and moving toward 2 million. And all of that, as long as our states do the right thing. And I wish our governor well in making sure it gets out and not wasting any efforts. But it has to ramp up. So I wish you well on that.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to move on to the last, and I've got a couple minutes left, so let's try to get Ken in from Erie. Hi, Ken.
Hello. How are you tonight?
I'm doing well. I've got a couple minutes left before I have to hang up, so let's get at it.
Yeah, well, I was going to call about the gun thing originally. I tried the last couple times, but that question got answered. The second thing that's been annoying is I've got the COPD, and I'm home a lot, so I listen to shows like yourself and TV and that a lot. And I can't believe the calls that we've been getting, the scam calls. It's just been pathetic. I mean, you cannot enjoy... the telephone seems to be going off constantly, no matter what you do. We try blocking it and everything, and it seems like it's getting worse instead of better. Now they're hitting our cell phones really heavy, and it's coming out of a 700 series out west someplace, and we block them, report them as scams, and it's just annoying at 9:30, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, and, and start up in the first thing in the morning and stuff. And I was just wondering, it's been pretty quiet about that. I know you've worked in the past to try to come up with something or to take a look at it when I contact your office. I've been...
Yeah, we passed a series of bills last year on phone fraud, as well as these nuisance phone calls and scam phone calls. But as I said all along, once we do something, it ends up they find a way around it. For me, I get the same things, but I found probably the best thing I do is not answer the phone if I don't know the number. I don't answer it, and if they don't leave a voicemail message, I know it was a scam. And pretty soon it seems to go down. I still get plenty of them, but it's not an irritating sort of way. And as far as my cell phone, I certainly leave that away from my bed at night, so that doesn't bother me. But we'll keep looking at it. That whole telecommunications issue is a difficult challenge because we've got people that have more time on their hands to figure ways to mess up with the system. And if they did as much for a positive thing, they'd be geniuses. And it's hard. My One Ring scam, that piece of legislation I put through most recently, that hopefully will be a help, that we can at least prosecute these people if we're able to find them. But that's still the issue of how we find the people. Ken, I appreciate the call. We'll keep working at it. It's a process, but we hear you and experience it myself. Well, let me say this. Thank you for each of you for being on tonight. Those of you who are still on, those of you who are left, you're not hearing this, but I'm glad at least you were on for a while. Appreciate the callers who asked the questions, made the comments. Hopefully it's been a help to those, and we'll be doing this again, especially since we can't do live town halls yet, but we're trying to figure out a way in the springtime where we can get back to doing those as well. You have a good day. Remember, we're Americans. It's still a great country. Let's not be people who divide. Let's pull together. Let the ones who divide see us as examples of how it ought to be in America. You have a great day. God bless. Bye-bye.